Hello students, and welcome to the next lesson in our AS level Human Geography course. Today we're going to be looking at part 8, which is all about population structure. What is a population structure? Basically, a population structure is the proportion of both males and females that consist of different age ranges inside a single population. Now, these population structures by a single population are normally measured just in one single country. And they're illustrated by such things called population pyramids. So now we're going to have a look at what these are and what they can show. So here's an example of a population pyramid. We can see running along the middle we have the population in millions, and running along the middle of these two sort of sides we have these different age ranges in these brackets. So let's go and explain it. In the middle, where we have all of our ages, we can then see these branches which go out either side, which indicate how many males and females there are for that age range in the population. Then, just by running down the middle, we can then see how many of these are actually living in the country in millions. So, for example, if we begin with a 0 to 4 age group, we can have a look and see that on the female side, there's about 3 million females that are of the age between 0 and 4 in whatever hypothetical country this population pyramid is from. Then we can have a look at the male side on the left and see that maybe it's a little bit more than 3 million, maybe 3.1 million males are between 0 and 4. So this population's sort of shape can change depending on the country. In developing countries, there tends to be more people along the lower end of the spectrum, say the bigger numbers in the 0 to 4 to 10 to 15 ranges, and much smaller numbers in the sort of 60s and 70s. This is simply because life expectancy is so much shorter, and in developed countries where life expectancy is longer because of better sanitation, healthcare, etc., there are a lot more people that are quite older. We tend to see more 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 60-year-olds, and a lot less sort of children and teenagers, simply because people have already had their children and the population is aging, and not many more young people are coming into the country. Now we're going to see what population pyramids can show, just apart from sort of numbers and stats. By looking at a population pyramid, we can see the effects of migration, the effects of war, famine, and disease, and an indication of life expectancy. So let's take this population pyramid as an example. We could probably tell if there has been a lot of migration in the country, because when people migrate to a country, the main reason they do so is looking for work. This means that the people are probably going to be aged between their 20s and 30s. So if we see a huge sort of boom coming out from that age range in a population pyramid, we can pretty much almost confirm, theoretically, that there was a lot of migrants coming into the country to try and look for jobs because of that demographic. We can also see the effects of war, famine, and disease by the shortages and gaps in the population pyramid. War, famine, and disease all kill off people, so all of a sudden, if we see an irregularity where numbers all of a sudden drop for a certain age range, we can presume that that age group was affected by either war, people going off and getting killed, famine, people not having the food to be able to eat and survive, or there could have been a disease that killed them off, such as polio did with a lot of older generations. Also can show you an indication of life expectancy. If we see a well-rounded number around older populations, we could probably presume that most people only live to that age. And equally with developing countries which have youthful populations, we can tell that because there are so few people that are in the 80s, 70s and 60s branch, that simply life expectancy is not very high at all. Now we can also link population pyramids to the demographic transition model. So each stage is going to have its own characteristics, and here's an example of what the population pyramids look like for each stage. In stage 1 we have a developing country because it is not very industrialized, not very developed, and because of that there is a useful population. Check out the video on the demographic transition model if you haven't seen it already, because it would make this explanation so much clearer. Now, because the stage 1 countries aren't very developed, of course they're not going to have a lot of sanitation and healthcare and food, so there are more of a youthful population and less people surviving to live to that older age. Then in stage 2 countries, when there's more developed, people tend to live longer. So now instead of a very short older age sort of slumped area, we have a straightened, more of a regular pattern. Now there are still more people that are being born simply because of lack of education on contraceptions and, shortage of contraceptions and religious reasons and whatever. There tend to be more youth anyway, so we can clearly see that the base where we have all the youth is much greater than all the higher parts of it where we have all the older people. Then in stage 3, we tend to become more rounded, and this is because the population is kind of becoming more regular. It's no longer youthful because we now have education on contraceptives and there are more in stock, so the youthful population isn't really a problem. Then in stage 4, we have an aging population where now we have more old people in the country and less sort of youthful populations, simply because changes in lifestyle and same-sex marriages and different concepts like that. So now we're going to link each stage to the DTM. So here we have our diagram of the DTM. Now stage 1 can fit on here, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and now stage 5, which we don't have a photo of because technically it's just a theoretical stage. I know Germany may be in it already, but still there isn't really backing to show how population structures can form as part of it, since they look almost the same as stage 4. But if we were to draw a hypothetical one on here, we could see that there would be almost no youthful population whatsoever, because people choose not to have all these children, as we can see on the graph, because the death rate is higher than the birth rate. And then we have a sort of rounded base where we have 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds living happily. But then because of the changing lifestyles, the older age then sort of die out as well, and we have more of an angular top. Now we're going to have a look at each characteristic of the population pyramid stages. So hit pause whenever you're ready to be able to copy all of these down, because it is a lot of information, but we'll talk through it now quite briefly and quickly so that you also have time to put it down. So as we've already run through pretty much, we can tell that from stage 1, the population pyramid will have a very high birth rate, a high death rate, low life expectancy, but a very high dependency ratio. This is because there are few adults, but many children. Now this is effectively exactly the same for stage 2 countries, where we have an example, which is Cambodia. However, this time there are more adults, so the high dependency ratio has actually dropped slightly, and also there is a lower death rate due to better developed sort of techniques to deal with death. Then with stage 3 countries, such as Brazil, we now have a lower dependency ratio, much higher life expectancy, and lower death rates. Stage 4 countries, we have a very low dependency ratio because the bulk of our population is in that working age, and lower death rates as well. Then in our stage 5 country, we have a very, very low dependency ratio because effectively the vast majority of the population are all working, and there is a high life expectancy, a higher death rate, and a very low birth rate, contrary to stage 1 and stage 2. Here you have some questions now on all the information which we've gone through in this video. Hit pause whenever you're ready to attempt all these questions, and then you can hit play whenever you're ready to see the answers. Here are the answers. If you got all 5 of these right, congratulations. I would advise you to move on to the next video in the playlist. However, if you did not, be sure to go over your notes once more or rewind the video. Or you could check out www.revisealevel.co.uk for some more geography revision. Join us next time where we're going to be looking at dependency ratios. Until then, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.